Gearing in Final Fantasy XIV's patch 5.5 is extremely accessible, and as you're going to find out in just a few moments, I actually mean that when I say that. And with the sheer number of new players coming in and experiencing Final Fantasy XIV for the first time, or returning veteran players that may have just taken a break and just fallen a little bit behind on gear, and the idea of how to catch up on gear can sometimes seem a little bit daunting at first to players. The entire purpose of this mini-series is me trying to showcase the extremely many ways to acquire gear for item levels really quickly. And some of these methods, like the method that I'm going to be talking about in this video, are very quick. In fact, probably the quickest method, which we are going to be talking about in this video, you can literally take a brand new boosted level 80 character, and then you can probably in a single day, if I'm being quite honest, get it so that that is in full 520 item level gear. In a single day. As always, if this video helped you in any way and you want to help support me and my content, I would incredibly appreciate if you lobbed a upgraded piece of gear at that like button and cat daddied that subscribe button. So let's talk about this particular first video in the series. So my first video is addressing two major concerns. Firstly, what even is a good item level? Because these are seemingly arbitrary numbers. Like, let's address that and pin that down. And then secondly, we're going to be talking about what is, in my opinion, the fastest method to gear, which is crafted gear. Other parts in this series are going to be focusing on things like tomestones, hunts, pass extremes, alliance raids, relic weapons, and so many other methods to gear up. But this video in particular is setting up the foundation and then crafted gear. This has ultimately been made into a series, honestly, because as you're going to probably tell from the length of this video alone, is that I do not hold back any of the details, and I go into full details and give you the full toolkit in order that, like, anyone coming from any game, whether you're completely new to Final Fantasy XIV or a returning veteran, that you have the details on how you can do this yourself, and probably more effectively than you might otherwise have. Like, some of my tips and tricks, especially for the crafted in this video, are probably going to be really important. Timestamps, of course, are going to be through the video, though, if you just want to skip ahead. So before I say another word, another thing about crafted gear or anything, I want to make sure that I don't throw out seemingly arbitrary numbers at you. So let's pin this down. What exactly are item levels, and what are we aiming for in order to do the more difficult endgame content? And honestly, I find this to be one of the most frequent questions I get asked in general. So I want to take a quick moment here to dispel the fog. If you are already familiar with this, totally feel free to skip ahead. So patch 5.2 and patch 5.3's best in slot armor was item level 500, with an item level 505 weapon specifically dropped from raids. Patch 5.4 and now patch 5.5 best in slot item level is item level 530 with an item level 535 weapon specifically from raids. And while that might seem high if you already have a little bit of context and you're just like, hey, I just only have like item level 400, don't be intimidated by that. You're gonna be fine. But in order to participate in the Savage raids, all you really need is item level 500 or 510 for the final fight. No, not 520 or 530. Do not worry about that. I actually need to say that because I get a lot of nervous questions from new players on that. Like, can I participate in Savage raids if I'm like 515 item level? And I'm like, yes. I was actually clearing Savage fights in basic 510 crafted gear. Yeah, you shouldn't need 530 item level to do it. But now let's talk about Extreme Trials. The current brand new 5.5 fight added was the Diamond Weapon Extreme, which has a requirement of item level 510. An Expert Roulette only needs item level 490, so if you're only looking to do like expert dungeons and not anything else, like that's gonna be so good. Like 490, really, really accessible. So now let's add more context. What does this all mean? This means that you can theoretically just be fine with item level 510 gear. You can get the basic crafted set we're going to talk about in step 1. You don't even need to augment it. You'll be able to access the content. In fact, almost all of my Emerald weapon clears were done in item level 510 gear because, let's be honest, 2020 and 21 have been an absolute clusterfluff to my life. But that also indicates, though, that item level 520 is actually really solid. Like, if you're item level 520, you should have no problem handling Diamond Weapon Extreme at all, let alone Savage Raids, where at that point you are honestly outgearing the content quite heavily. 530 and 535, while nice, is simply excessive gear, which by definition, in order to clear the entire Savage tier, in order to get the 535 weapon, you literally couldn't go into that fight with a 535 weapon, because you need to clear the fight in order to get the weapon. I don't know if that even makes sense, but you do not need it in order to clear the Savage is my real big point. So now with that context out of the way, let's get into the first method that I want to cover, and as you're going to find out, this is really quick, especially if you have people helping you, especially if you're taking part in hunt trains and other methods to quickly acquire allegory tomestones. This is going to be extremely quick. So the first and most trivial method of acquiring gear is crafted gear. This gearing method honestly only has two real big parts to it, and the first part is going to give you an item level of 510, and the second upgrade will give you 520 item level. You can literally immediately boost a completely fresh character to the level 80 and acquire full 520 item level gear that exact same day with this method. There are no weekly lockouts. Like if you grinded allegory, which is not the capped tombstone, and you grinded it fast enough with hunt trains, dailies, I actually do think maybe one day, maybe two, is actually really possible. It'll be tough, but I do think it's possible. Diving in to the first step of the item level 510 gear, let's get into the details, because this is actually going to be a little involved. So this gear, these pieces you can buy straight off of the market board, no problem. And it's not that expensive on the market board. In fact, I was picking up pieces for like 30k gil or so for a single piece a few weeks ago. But I have noticed, because as I'm recording this video, I'm actively engaging when I make content, I make sure that I'm like actively engaging with what I'm doing. Like I absolutely am a practice what you preach. So I went to the market board myself right now, and I have noticed, at least on Gilgamesh right now, that the prices are inflated right now, and I'm not sure if that's because the World Transfer Service is currently down, or if patch 5.5 hype is really high, because remember, it's only been out for like 24 hours, like a little over 24 hours by the time I'm recording this video. And yeah, but in my experience, the prices are very likely to crash sooner rather than later, especially as more crafters get back into the swing of things. So I think that the market will eventually even itself out. But even now, it's around the 100k-ish mark for a single piece of gear. Which, if I'm being super honest, this makes it extremely easy to gear out a friend, such as I took Brendan and I just gave him an entire 510 set of crafted healer gear back in 5.4, which, while I tell him costed me an arm and a leg, in reality it cost me less than this derpy dragon statue I put in my FCS. And honestly, screw how expensive this derpy dragon statue was. Like, bathe in its derp. I will somehow use this derpy thing in my content to make myself feel better about it. But what I would recommend is, if you are really struggling with this guild-wise, is pick up the most individual basic materials and then ask someone to please help you craft it in Limsa. Overwhelmingly, the majority of the time, the most basic materials are much cheaper than the final product. This is actually one method that I actually make my gil from, is literally just flipping items on the market board and crafting them. It is going to be, in my experience, much cheaper, like significantly so. I cannot stress it enough. If you are overwhelmed by the price of the final product, check into the basic materials. And maybe, of course, it depends on your data center, it depends on your server. The prices of the materials might somehow in some weird world be more expensive, but in my experience, overwhelming amount of the time, this is cheaper. And honestly, it's probably because doing the legwork for crafted materials sucks. But I digress. Which is actually going to bring me, the sucking of the crafting material list, is going to bring me into the new question that I get asked not as frequently as I actually kind of expected, is how exactly do you find what these basic materials are? Which is absolutely a critical question, because this can be one of the most difficult hurdles for a new player to get over. And just as a disclaimer, there are very many ways that are extremely valid to get a list of crafted items. All of them are fantastic, but my personal preference that I'm going to recommend, because I literally use the site myself day in, day out, is the website Garland Tools database. Specifically the database, I am using that so much. what you can just do is you can go into the website and enter XArkit into the search bar, and then you can find out the particular gear pieces that your job uses, such as you can see this aiming piece is for Dancer, Bard, or Machinist. Okay, well, I'm playing ranged DPS in my raid group, so bam, I found this. Then you click onto that item, and then you can click on the crafting tab within that item. And to be honest, I adore this website over any others because it literally breaks down exactly what basic materials you need. And you're going to see another feature that I'm going to show in a second. So for this particular XArkit arm guards of aiming, you need 2 gardenia fruit, 4 thylakoth skin, and then 1 sublime solution. I almost said palicos skin. Oh my god, pork palicos. Honestly, you can even drill down deeper and then see that you can actually acquire gardenia fruit from allegory tomestones, and the same with thylakoth skin. So you can drill down into these even further and find out exactly where to get them. But without any crafting or gathering, which is my assumption going into this video, you might need a friend to help you out with that. So things like 3 hard water or 2 Levin Strike Aether Sand, you might need to go to the market board. Probably would if you don't have a friend that's into crafting gathering and you aren't into it yourself. So definitely check into that. So I would also like to mention that you can check off items in the user interface, and it really helps because it lets me know my progress. It is simple, but very effective. And honestly, I think that's when design is best, when it's simple and effective and clear. But with all of these basic materials checked off, now you can go into Limsa and then shout that you need a crafter. And then they can help make you this, and then ta-da, you have that gloves. Now, before I leave this particular suggestion, like this recommendation, I do want to mention that Garland Data does have the ability to create a list and groups. So I can click a new list here, give it any name here, like for me, aiming set, and then I'll add all of the items that I want into that list. And then I go up to tools, I click that I want a new group, and then I drag and put all of those items into that group. Now, if you want to check out here, you can literally go into the crafting tab, and then you will see the total sum of all of the materials necessary to create all of those items that you just put into that group. Meaning that if you want a full aiming set, now you know the full total sum of all of the basic materials to acquire to get that set. And yeah, it looks like an intimidating number, but I think that it would definitely be accessible. Absolutely think that it would be totally doable and work out to be cheaper overall. But again, you can budget it out and figure it out yourself, because especially like market boards are so different between even the servers, let alone data centers. So I'm gonna end that there. You'll have to work out those numbers yourself. So with that all being closed off, there are many ways to get the 510 crafted set on a budget. Now let's talk about upgrading to 520. There is going to be, before I even say another thing on 527, there is going to be an extremely important tip at the end of this. So if you want to jump to that, totally feel free to do that. But I'm just going to keep going with the 520 set under the assumption that you are going to have a 510 set, very similar to what I have right now. So this entire second step revolves around the NPC Hilician in Eulmore. To begin, you need a single high quality piece of crafted gear or 3 normal quality pieces of crafted gear, because what you are doing is you are trading in the HQ, so high quality piece, or normal pieces of gear to her for Eulmoran certificates of grandeur. 1 high quality piece of gear will give you enough tokens to purchase the augmented 520 item level version. So 1 high quality piece, or 3 normal quality. Makes it very easy actually for me, because I already had a full 510 high quality set to get the 520. It's very simple actually for me. But there is actually one additional requirement to purchase the 520 version. You require a special item called Crystalline Rain that you can also purchase from Hilician for 100 Allegory Tomestones per rain. So once you've traded in your gear, obtained your Eulmoran certificates and Crystalline Rain, you now have 520 gear. No weekly lockouts, no raiding, very straightforward path to extremely solid gear. You will not need much more item level than this to compete very well in endgame content. And honestly, I literally struggle to imagine a world so backwards where someone in Diamond Weapon Prog would be like, you need higher than 520 item level gear to join my party. I can't imagine it. I can't. Or like Savage, like 520 is solid. Now this is actually going to be really important. This is going to be a trick that you can do where you can get more Ul'dah certificates and really reduce the cost that you have. Because I said that I made the assumption before that you would just obtain the full high quality pieces like what I've done and then trade them in for the exact amount of Ul'dah certificates to get the 520 item level piece. This is true, and probably what many players, especially returning players or people who've kept playing like me that already had the set will do. But is it the most efficient way? Probably not. Probably not. And I want to say that so clearly in this video. Probably not. Ul'dah certificates of grandeur are just that. They are Ul'dah certificates of grandeur. They are the same type of currency. Whether it is from a weapon, a body piece of armor, or an accessory, or whatever else, it is the same Ul'dah certificate of grandeur. And it is very possible that if you are budgeting, that you can optimize what gear you have crafted for you, or craft yourself, to minimize the amount of gil that you need to spend to get that full set of 520 gear. After all, why spend an inflated amount of gil when you don't need to? When your ultimate goal is 520 gear and you want to completely circumvent the 510, why not? This level of optimization, though, does go way past the boundaries of this video and is incredibly server dependent and data center dependent, and I don't feel comfortable stating, oh, you should make specifically rings, or oh, you should make specifically necklaces, or wow, we're noticing that legs on Cactar server are like 20k per piece, so like buy like 30 of them. Like, I can't say that. I would love to, but I can't say that. It would be outdated so rapidly. But my main point, my main takeaway is that you can get something like 30 high quality rings, get a ton of certificates from trading in specifically rings, and buy the entire 420 set literally just from rings. Amusing? Sure, absolutely, I find it ridiculous, but totally possible. Anyhow, that does it for part 1 of this mini-series on gearing up in 5.5. Next topic is to be posted soon. I don't know soon. But before I close off, I want to leave the floor to you all. What do you want to see, or questions? What questions do you have in terms of like gearing up or concerns? Because I would be more than happy to talk about them in my next video. So let me know your thoughts, concerns, questions in the comment section down below. I will be reading it. Anyhow, that is all for this video. Take care and be safe, everyone.